Epilogue. Tien was back at his volunteer teaching job in a matter of days with the help from the village head. Kamabing Lei told him that when he had phoned Kru Vinai, the foundation director, the man wasn't surprised one bit. He even said he would send the credential letter afterwards. It had been 2 years and his little pupils had all grown up. The old ones became more fluent in Thai and there were new faces joining in this time. Tien was having a headache. He didn't prepare any class just like the last time, so he used the drawing and toy invention that he was good at to keep their attention and to learn what the former teacher had let off in the old textbooks in the cabinet. Captain Fufa, no, he was now Major Fufa, was busy with teaching the new captain at the base, so they rarely met. He wasn't feeling lonely or sulky though. After the evening on Pha Pandao where they poured their hearts out to each other, he was feeling strangely awkward around the other man. Later this afternoon, the young man borrowed a plastic basin from Kamabing Lei to wash his clothes at the waterfall under the scorching sun. He found a good spot and sat down under a canopy, using a herbal soap to scrub on his expensive clothes, not worrying if they would be ruined. As he washed his clothes for half an hour, sweats were pouring out and it became intolerable. Too fucking hot. He shot up, pulling his shirt and taking out the jeans, leaving only a boxer on him, not caring if he'd offend the forest spirit. The lean, firm body jumped into the water where the cascade hit the basin, and the half-naked body was swimming in the cool river until he caught the sight of a tall man on a large boulder. The man was crossing his arms, staring. The officer was frowning as he watched and started reprimanding.
"Why did you get bare ass like that? What if some young girls stumble upon you? That would be against the norm."
The younger man wasn't fazed and shot a wide smile back at him.
"So what? I can marry her and live here forever."
Tien swam towards Major Fufa, whose face darkened, and shot the older man a sweet smile.
"I was kidding. Come on. Everyone is at the plantation. That's why I came here to wash the clothes."
He chose the hour where the sun was right above their heads because the women often came to take water or wash the clothes at dawn for its mild weather. He reached out towards the officer and said sweetly,
"Pull me, please."
The intense dark eyes glared at him for a moment, then he yielded. Fufa crouched down and gave the younger man his hand. Tien grabbed his rough wrist and pulled the older man into the water. The massive officer emerged from the water and bore his fangs at the younger man who was laughing, pleased, not far away.
"What the hell? I'm so afraid you'll have a stroke. You always look constipated."
Even if he was trying to make it like he meant well, his smile was wicked and a contrast to his words.
"Are you having fun? Come here, punk."
Fufa lunged forward and grabbed the slim waist. Tien was struggling to go away, but he was spun around quickly. The naked skin pressing tight to the Major's green khaki t-shirt created a physical friction that made Tien stop writhing. Their faces were a breath apart. Their eyes that met spoke 1,000 silent words. The fair face inched away as the other man leaned down, and the thick lips pressed on the smooth cheek instead. The soft soap scent emitting from the clear skin drew the tip of the Major's straight nose to wander until he reached the back of the younger man's ear. Tien shut his eyes tight, feeling goosebumps all over him. Okay, he knew that their relationship needed the next step, and they couldn't keep it to kissing the forehead and the hands forever. They were both men, and they knew what men wanted. But this was freaking embarrassing. He pushed the older man's face away and pretended to cry out loud.
"You're shameless! Let me go!"
Fufa looked at the boy's cheeks that were turning red and he smiled, pleased. Yet he kept his arms tight around Thien's body.
Didn't someone say he would never let me go ever again?
The city boy let his mouth fall open, not expecting such a promise to bite him back in the rear like this. His soft brown eyes narrowed with frustration.
So you better tie me up with you and bring me along on the battlefield? Nah.
The officer objected, and continued with the words that made the younger man wishing he could bomb himself.
I better tie you to my bed. Captain!
Thien shouted at the top of his lungs, kicking the big officer away until he broke free from the embrace and climbed back up the shore. Fufa chuckled deeply. Even if he was no longer the captain, he preferred Thien to call him this way. No matter how long time had passed, he would always be captain to this special someone. Kama Bingley exclaimed as he saw the soaking wet major walking side by side with the teacher who was frowning. He put down the potato he was peeling and invited them to change the clothes in the house. He took the opportunity to lend the teacher his son's hill tribe costumes, knowing the boy didn't bring many clothes with him on his sudden journey. Both young men raised their hands in a V to thank Kama for his help, and returned to the teacher's run-down hut that the mechanic soldiers restored to a good living condition a few days earlier. The hut came alive from the constant bickering from the two men that could be heard once in a while. The scent of fried morning glory and omelette emanated from under the hut's open space where someone was cooking dinner. Thien put the rice pot with a beam on the litter that already had simple dishes laid out on it. Soon afterwards, Fufa, who was dressed in Aka clothes, showed up with a plate of spicy boiled egg salad. The younger major came to have dinner with the teacher every evening and stayed to chat with him until late before leaving. Tomorrow was a day off, and he wouldn't miss the opportunity to ask to spend the night here. Fufa put the spicy egg salad into his lover's dish.
Have a bite. I made it not to be too hot.
Any food was good with hot rice. Thien scooped the food into his mouth, chewing happily, and put the fried morning glory he made into the major's dish. But instead of getting a happy reaction, the officer was acting as if he was swallowing a bitter pill.
What's with that face? You're being rude. I saw that you put half a bottle of fish sauce. I didn't put it. It was spilled.
He scooped the veggie and pushed towards the officer's lips, forcing him to take it.
I made this. You're not going to eat it?
The warrior finally yielded, not being able to fight against the plea. He opened his mouth for the morning glory in fish sauce that made his eyes water, but he managed to swallow everything without a single word.
Isn't it sweet?
The rascal grinned, feeling pleased that he finally got back at the officer.
Whatever you make is sweet.
Hearing such sappy words from the poker-faced man made Thien nauseated.
Enough, Captain. I'm not going anywhere, so cut the saps. We'll find out if you're not really going anywhere tonight.
Meeting the major's bright eyes made him look down as he continued with his food, shutting up and not wanting to bicker any further. He felt a chill run down his spine as a hunch crept up on him. The word tonight emphasized that he wasn't going anywhere, indeed. The light from the kerosene lamp was dim, that the room was dark and only the silhouettes could be seen. The lean form that turned his back towards the door inside the mosquito net sighed softly, watching his watch as relief washed over him. The man who had asked to spend a night with him left to talk to Kama Bingley since evening, and he didn't return yet, even if it was already 11 at night. He pulled a thin blanket over him from head to toe. Even if it was summer, the temperature on the hill was still cold. Knowing he was getting away tonight, the young man quickly fell asleep. Near midnight, heavy footsteps were coming from the stairs, but the sleeping man wasn't roused. The tall man leaned down to whisper in his ear.
If you're not awake, I can't promise you'll be fine.
As soon as the words ended, the almond eyes snapped open.
What?
Tien gasped, alarmed, and spun around to face the Major. Strong arms wrapped around his thin waist and pulled him tight.
You came back late. If I came back early, we would start early. Is it what you prefer?
Fufa teased the man in his arms. The city boy swallowed thickly.
Does it have to be tonight?
The dark face leaned closer and the Major pressed a comfort kiss on the younger man's lips.
We can try. If you don't like it, we will stop.
That was the worst foreplay he'd ever heard in his whole life. Tien took in a deep breath. All right, so be it. He shut his eyes to receive the kiss from the first and last man he'd ever loved in his life. As soon as their lips touched, he froze. Soon, the tip of a warm tongue started to ignite the same heat in his body. Rough hands slowly slid inside his thin t-shirt and roamed over his smooth skin until it touched the soft bud on his chest. The coarse finger rolled on his sensitive spot until Tien started to feel the pang, and he curled, pulling away. The officer withdrew from the kiss-swollen lips and pulled the t-shirt from his lover's head and pushed the boy's thin wrists over his head on the mattress. Smooth, fair chest rose as Tien was breathing heavily, tempting him to bend down and take it. Fufa kissed softly along the operation wound and moved to lap the nipple that had turned dusky pink from the previous rough touch. The younger man writhed from the spasm he had never experienced before. His thin lips parted to let out a soft moan as his chest bud was being mercilessly bitten, suckled, and pulled.
Captain, it hurts.
The tall, well-built form withdrew, but only to pull his shirt away, revealing himself to the younger man. Tien had to look, and his droopy brown eyes was fixated on the man on top of him, on the sun-kissed skin, on the muscles that were highlighted under the dim light. The officer's broad chest tapered down to the tight six-pack like a warrior sculpture that would incite any envy in any man. Long fingers reached up to skim over old and new scars on the other man's naked chest.
Are you hurt?
He knew these are the evidence of the other man's sacrifice to serve and protect his country. Fufa smiled gently, but it made his handsome face look wicked. He put his hand over Tien's and slowly brought it to his torso.
It hurts more right here.
The heat from the tips of his fingers by touching the thick hardness that was growing even thicker made Tien's skin burn hot, feeling embarrassed. He wanted to pull his hand back, but it was pushed deeper into the woven pants to greet his new friend intimately. The younger man who was lying on his back held his breath and turned away. He wasn't so naive to not know which cave this anaconda was going in the end. He just needed time to process and accept it. The Major chuckled softly at the younger man's cautious reaction, so he took pity on him and stopped teasing his lover, letting the younger man withdraw his hand. Fufa lowered himself down on the man underneath and roamed his nose and lips along the smooth cheeks as if being bewitched. His large hands still worked vigorously until the lean form became so pliant, like wax under flame. He took the chance that Tien was drowned in pleasure to pull down his boxer from his legs, pressing kisses along his sweaty neck to whisper in his ear,
Tien, move.
The younger man didn't understand what it meant at first, but as soon as Fufa touched him in the rear, he tensed up. The officer slowly let his breath out through his mouth, trying to control his overwhelming urge, and pushed the long legs open. Thien started to resist as an alien object invaded his body, yet the writhing body set the passion aflame. A thick finger pushed into the tight passage and was met with resistance. The younger man's handsome face was twisted with a sweet, endless torment, but as soon as the rough finger started to roll around deep inside of him and hitting the sweet spot he had never known existed, Thien trembled with dark desire. He breathed heavily, his body arched up as the desire became unbearable. Thien wound his arms around the Major's strong neck and whispered in a croaked voice, "I can't do it now." Fufa answered without hesitation. He was on the verge of breaking down himself and pulled down his pants, revealing the perfect erection. He parted the long, lean legs apart and put the tip of his manhood against the tight, soft entrance. It was as if his body was splitting in two. Thien's head tipped backward as if he wanted to scream at the top of his lungs, but only a soft sobbing came out of his lips. He bit down his lips until they became bruised, as he tried to take in his lover's enormous erection that was giving him both pain and pleasure. Long fingers dug and scraped the broad back as the solid body above him started to move in and out. The burning rod was pushing hard into him, and Thien let his head fall back, letting the pleasure take over. His sweet brown eyes gazed at the ceiling and saw the movements of two lovers who were vigorously making love. Thien started panting, not knowing he would be moaning under someone like this. Someone else must have thought of it as being disgraceful, but this was love. Clear juices were leaking out from the hardness that was rubbed against the solid six-pack, and as soon as the climax hit him, the younger man was thrown into a spasm that shot throughout his body. Fufa pushed in the hilt and shot thick, hot cum until it poured out of the bruised, reddened passage. He leaned down to kiss the sweaty forehead to comfort his lover.
"Are you okay?"
the Major asked in a broken voice. As the dark desire recited, Thien winced as the pang shot at him once again right inside the passage that was still holding the other man's thickness. He punched the thick shoulder, infuriated.
"How can I be okay? Have you ever had a torpedo shot through your ass?"
The target of the complaint grinned, amused.
"Thanks for the compliment." "I didn't give you a compliment."
Thien tried to push the man on top of him away.
"Take that thing out. It's uncomfortable." "Looks like you still have some energy left. Want to go another round?" "What round? No! Let me go!"
The volunteer teacher struggled as hard he could, but his wrists were grabbed and pushed into the mattress once again. The almond eyes widened as the hardness inside him started to grow thicker again, and he couldn't do anything but part his lips to take the hard kiss from the officer. He was afraid that if he screamed, the whole village would barge in for the rescue. Hence, the battle inside the mosquito net continued under the soft moonlight that streamed down and touched the ground. That was the first night that two hearts and two bodies became one. The night that would be impaled into both of their memories as long as they lived. It was nearly dawn, but the abused man still lied in his old mattress. As he turned, he winced from the pain and soreness that shot through his body. Almond eyes slowly pried open as if he just woke up after being knocked out in the night. The wetness on his body made him glance towards the massive body that was moving in the dim light.
"Captain,"
he said in a parched voice.
Are you feeling any better? Fufa asked, concerned. He had just wiped the boy clean from all the fluid and put new clothes on him. Thick hand gently placed on the forehead. You're a bit warm. I made you boil rice. Eat and take some paracetamol. The teacher nodded pliantly, feeling grateful for everything the young major was doing for him. He pulled the man's arm and the officer dropped down on the mattress next to him, and he wound his arms around the big torso to lock the older man in place. The pretty face that was a little pale smiled happily as he heard a low whisper of complaint. You're such a child. My heart's cold. I need a hug. Fufa chuckled, thinking about his flirt 2 years ago. Now you're trying to get my attention. What do you want? I must warn you that I don't get paid that much being an officer. I'm not asking for anything. Tien scrunched his nose and pushed his face against a hard bicep. I just want to be with you for as long as I can. The massive officer put his hand on the back of the shapely head and caressed his lover's soft hair. He decided to tell the younger man about the good news he had received the morning before on a radio signal from King Mangai the Great camp, which was his command. The entrance examination to the Command and General Staff College is the beginning of the next month. If I got into it by the end of the month, we have to get ready to go to Bangkok. The city boy rolled his eyes, pondering, and smiled lightly. This means I can continue my study in Bangkok too. Even if they had to live in separate compounds because he had to return to his family home, at least they wouldn't be a world apart. What if I want to return to Shanghai after my graduation? I'm going back with you. Tien pushed himself up and put his pointy chin on the broad, solid chest, his eyes shining in the dim light in a knowing stare. You don't need to test my loyalty for you. I know that your rank is above being stationed at a border base. You need to move to a battalion now. Wherever you go, I'll be haunting you like a ghost. Do not even think about dumping me and leaving me behind. He threatened the older man, but that made the major laugh. I'm not dumping you. You're ferocious and wild. Where else can I find such a good MWD? Are you calling me a dog? Tien grabbed the major's neck and shook him, but the next thing he knew, he was flipped to lie on his back. Fufa leaned down to plant a soft kiss on his smooth cheek and said the sweetest words to the man who had his heart. I love you. Tien froze and turned his burning face away, feeling embarrassed. Soon after, the thin lips that were pressed tightly parted to reveal a long-buried secret. I love you too. The heart inside his left chest suddenly thudded and thrummed as if to say, and so do I. As their eyes met, the deep bond that tied them together strengthened and pulled the two lips into a deep, searing kiss as the two men poured their hearts into each other. From now on, no matter what might come their way, they would never be apart again. That was the promise they'd made to the sea of 1,000 and tens of thousands of stars across the sky. Thank you to the destiny that had brought them together. Thank you, Thorfinn, for the precious memory that was made ours. The end. Okay guys, that's the end of A Tale of 1,000 Stars. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe. I will be doing a lot more books. So if you have anything you want to hear, please leave me some suggestions in the comments. And I'll see you with the next book. Bye.